are petrified HuoHuo's biggest pros and cons? That's what I'm here to tell you today. My name is Juice and let's get into it. First off, I need to explain how HuoHuo is a living, breathing DOT legend. As we all know, Kafka Swan teams are some of the most nuclear comps that this game has to offer, exploding MOC in all of our endgame modes like it's nobody's business. Damage, meta viability, and Star Rail's two hottest waifus? It's all yours, my friend, as long as you have enough attack percent. And what do you know? HuoHuo buffs attack percent by quite a large amount. Here's my HuoHuo's ultimate at level 9, providing a 38% attack percent boost, which is kind of ridiculous. Not to mention how it's team-wide, and since Kafka and Black Swan comprise a dual carry team, HuoHuo is buffing both of the team's main damage contributions. Not to mention how amazing it is that she helps restore energy faster. Kafka's burst is an absolute nuke, and there is nothing more I love in this entire game than hearing her say boom, and then all the enemies get whacked into the afterlife. Exhilarating, I tell you. Plus, that's not all. DOT has absolutely nothing to do with crit, so 2-piece sets like Broken Keel do absolutely nothing for the team. Whereas 2-piece Penacony, yeah, I'll get onto Fleet in a minute, but hear me out on Penacony here. Black Swan does a crap ton of the damage in a DOT team, and giving HuoHuo a 2-piece Penacony set means that not only will HuoHuo be giving the team what is the equivalent of a large crit buff or a hyper carry to the entire comp, but she'll directly increase the win damage that DOTs do. DOTs aren't like breaks, where damage bonus doesn't have any effect on buffing them. The 10% damage provided will actually throw Black Swan quite the hefty bone. Increasing her own energy rate is also very cool, since throwing off HuoHuo's burst more often equals more team-wide energy on the whole. Here's a side-by-side on HuoHuo getting hit on Broken Keel and 2-piece Penacony. It's a small difference, but it's still there. 3 hits are almost enough to get HuoHuo's burst off after doing a normal attack at half of her ultimate gauge being full. Then, if we use HuoHuo's skill, we have this happen instead. 2-piece skill is a little further off than 2-piece Penacony. You may be thinking, alright, but what's the point? It's not like Penacony is giving you more ults per cycle. Per cycle, no, but over the course of 3 cycles, it adds up and you'll get an extra ult pop-off. Before we get into this lengthy explanation, the reason why I think more HuoHuo ultimates is good is because more Kafka ultimates is really good. And having that attack percent buff up time is a very juicy thing. If we assume 5 actions, 3 skills and 2 basics, and with base energy being 50%, you get 70 energy when you start an MOC floor with HuoHuo. This is because her max energy is 140. She also gets 1 energy point for every heal trigger from her talent, so let's assume about 16 procs, 12 from 3 allies taking 4 turns, and 1 ultimate from each ally, not including HuoHuo's own ultimate. If you have roughly 120% DR using Keel, you get 244 energy. If you have roughly 125% DR using 2-piece Penacony, that's 251 energy. This assumes you do not get hit at all. You're guaranteed at least 1 ultimate due to the 140 ult cost, so let's see how many enemy hits it takes until you can get a second ult during this time, assuming that you get 10 energy for each time an enemy hits you. You'd need to be hit 3 times in order to get another ult. Is this possible without 2-piece Penacony? Well, 176 energy, which is the energy from assuming 3 skills, 2 normal, 16 talent procs, and getting hit 3 times, multiplied by 1.194, which is 119.4% energy recharge, but in decimal form, gives you 210 energy. Add on the 70 flat energy which you get from entering an MOC stage, since that energy is never affected by ERR, and you get 280.4 energy exactly. With 2-piece Penacony, you get a 290 energy. This seems like a small difference, but that extra amount of energy is preventing energy overflow from being a problem, which we're not accounting for right now. What is energy overflow? It's essentially when, let's say you have 135 energy on HuoHuo. You get hit by an enemy, so that's 10 energy, yet you cap at 140, so it's 5 energy lost. 2-piece Penacony helps by alleviating the loss because you generate more energy over time, and the more skills, basics, talent triggers, etc. that you assume, the better the 2-piece Penacony starts to look when it comes to getting more HuoHuo bursts. Otherwise, yes, 2-piece Fleet is so damn nice since you get attack for everyone while also giving HuoHuo more HP stats, but I'm making the case for 2-piece Penacony because Kafka's detonations are nuclear, and reaching that threshold faster is a big win. So, you have 2 very DOT-friendly 2-pieces that cater to the team insanely well, a massive attack percent buff, and synergy with one of the strongest units in the current meta that works excellently across all endgame modes. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. This ends up causing HuoHuo to be the best in slot sustain for DOT by kilometers. It's chips, not fries, by the way. And means that even with all the other really good meta healers and shielders that are running around the place, HuoHuo still has an extremely justifiable use case. Plus, I'm sure that since you're such a bright, attentive mind, not only have you remembered to click the subscribe button, but you've realized how much utility this one healer has. Back when Honkai Star Rail was a new game, a healer was judged as good if they could heal up a crap ton. Dude, there was a time when Bailu was considered good, isn't that a throwback? But nowadays, a healer has to do a lot more than just heal to be worth picking up. HuoHuo definitely delivers on this front. Let's list all the different things she can do when you add her to a team. A. Very good buffing. B. Help you get your team's ultimates back faster. C. Cleanse teammate debuffs very easily. D. Provide a reliable source of healing. E. Provide general crowd control resistance. She has so much utility packed into your kit that when you pull for HuoHuo, you're also pulling for a mini buffer of sorts. Obviously, she's not as broken as a Harmony buffer who has their core identity centered around being a buffer, yet for a healer, the buffs she provides are significant and worth your time. Also, if you're not a DOT player whatsoever, well, she can easily swap two pieces depending on what you need, making her build quite flexible, since you can easily run two-piece Broken Keel if necessary as an example. Also, it'd be stupid of me to make a video on a healer without commenting on her heals once. Yes, HuoHuo's healing is excellent and super meaty on top of everything else she provides. She should be able to keep you alive for sure. I also want to bring up how nice it is that HuoHuo can cleanse so easily. Being able to cleanse Kafka Dominations for starters is extremely comfortable since it negates arguably the most annoying part of that boss fight. Or if your character gets frozen or immobilized by any means, HuoHuo can prevent this. Or if you're fighting the Order, her talent is able to wake up your allies from the alien dream effect. Essentially, as long as you have HuoHuo's talent up, enemies will never be able to meaningfully debuff you, which is very neat. Other sustainers can cleanse too, like Luocha, but he cleanses a single ally at a time, whereas HuoHuo cleanses an ally right when they move, which is far more AoE in functionality, not to mention how much more reliable HuoHuo's cleanse is compared to Luocha. I say this because Colin's biggest fanboy over here can only cleanse your ally when they're either on their way to being on life support, or at the cost of a skill point. HuoHuo does want to use up quite a bit of skill points too, but at least her effect is far more AoE in turn, making her cleansing better in my opinion. Fu Xuan does have her single Effectorize Prevention instance, but it's only available once per turn, which I'm kind of iffy on if you're fighting a boss that tends to apply a crap ton of debuffs and weird ailments onto you. Aventurine's Effectorize provision is honestly insane, so I'm not going to put him down for not being able to cleanse. But what I will point out is that it isn't perfect either, because oftentimes when I fight the Order, my allies can still sometimes become susceptible to Alien Dream, though other effects like Domination, not so much. So if you're seriously in need of a good cleanse, then allow HuoHuo to act as your holy bleach. I'm mostly including this pro because I own HuoHuo Z1, so I feel like I can talk about it a decent amount. This thing is underrated. Like, genuinely underrated. To me, the difference between an E0 and E1 HuoHuo is freaking night and day. In DOT teams, you want to use Kafka's skill every turn so she can detonate more DOTs, and Black Swan's skill for AoE Arcana application. An E0 HuoHuo makes it iffy to constantly ever skill up while allowing for both of those things to happen consistently. However, at E1 she uses her skill one turn less, which honestly makes such a world of a difference. This completely resolves her skill point issues and makes her a lot more comfortable to slot into any team comp that's more on the skill point heavy side. HuoGoat also provides a 12% speed boost to your teammates while they're under the talent effect. Do you know how good that is? Black Swan's best in slot speed requirement is 155 if you want to play her at her most optimal, yet that's pretty hard to achieve considering all the other stats you want on your Black Swan. Yet if you have 145 speed, yeah, HuoHuo Z1 has you covered. Not to mention how Kafka moving more often is also obviously a good thing since more movements equals more Kafka skills, which equals more detonations. Do I need to elaborate more? Overall, for HuoHuo's best in slot team, which is DOT, her E1 solves her main core issue of skill point clunkiness, while also providing her another source of buffing, further expanding my point in which I stated how she brings you utility for days, and offers so much more to the table than just healing. Well, looks like you can throw speed buffing into that mix too. Plus, this is good for every team, not just DOT. Alas, not everybody is inclined to get E1 on a healer, which is fair enough. I honestly just went for it because I love the character. Without E1, she honestly does feel so much more clunky to fit into teams where there aren't already a lot of skill points being shared around. You have to use basic attacks on your Black Swan sometimes, which while that's fine in single target, limits your Arcana application in AoE, and that sucks, dude. And in pretty much any other team, my man, let's just say you're gonna have to budget when you have HuoHuo skill up or down. This kinda sucks since you end up not being able to have have her cleanse up 100% of the time, or if you do opt to, then you might miss out on damage since you've exchanged it for comfort instead. Which is fine, enemies are pretty hard hitting nowadays, but that's still not very epic on the whole. This is absolutely the main thing I'd ask you to consider if you're interested in pulling for HuoHuo. What is your main team, and does it suck up skill points faster than Venti sucks? Beer through a straw. Yes, beer through a straw, surely. This doesn't make HuoHuo unplayable or anything, and she still provides lots to your teams, but it does end up making other healers and shielders feel more competitive with her as a result. Another thing is that you'd usually rather prevent disasters than react to disasters. Does that sound confusing? Well, what I mean by that is that a shielder like Aventurine will usually prevent you from taking any major near-death hits in the first place, and while sure, his protection from enemy ailments may not be as 100% squeaky clean as the Grand HuoHuo Bleach, that doesn't suddenly make him way worse, because it's worth noting how Aventurine could keep your team alive better in some instances. Personally, I only found Apocalyptic Shadow clearable when I used Aventurine versus Cocomelon, since I found Argenti easier to survive, and Cocomelon's attacks were pretty dang rough, so Aventurine's shield was able to prevent a top 10 moment taken on camera before disaster. HuoHuo's healing is very fast and reliable, don't get me wrong, but I think this is pretty much my way of saying that I think for situations where you're more likely to get one-shot, I think Aventurine is better since his shield can stack so you can brace yourself for hard-hitting scenarios, and you usually get a tiny shield refresh whenever you run out of his skill shield with him. So survivability feels a lot more reliable with him, especially versus the more recent MOC bosses and the Apocalyptic Shadow game mode. I also wanted to compile some smaller, less important nitpicks I've had with her over my time playing this character ever since her release. A. She sucks against Sam, I unironically prefer to use Luocha here. B. She feels a little more pooper scooper to play against bosses that nuke you, I'd much rather play Aventurine against these kind of guys. C. Her ult will do nothing to fuel Acheron's ult. I'm pointing this out because Kafka Black Swan is a pretty popular DOT team, which I also indulge in, and the energy is essentially wasted on her. D. Even with E1, skill points in Kafka Black Swan are a menace. I don't know how you E0 HuoHuo players manage to do it. E. She looks like she hasn't slept in 80 years. Now that last one's not a con. Blame the living organism that lives on her. I think that since we're entering Honkai Star Rail's dry patches, a lot more people are gonna be skipping Yunli and Jiaoqiu since they are filler characters quite frankly, and reruns are gonna start to look a lot more appealing. So in this much more relaxed banner climate, seeing as during Penacody we kept getting banger after banger, is HuoHuo still worth your time? Well, I'm gonna say it up front, if you don't have a single 5-star sustain, then yes, of course. The only 4-star sustain that cooks extraordinarily hard is Gallagher, and that's assuming you're either an Acheron or Firefly player. I don't want to undersell him though, those are two of the most powerful and popular DPS characters in the game, so Gallagher absolutely has his merits. If you already have Luocha or Fu Xuan in Aventurine, I personally think that yes, she's worth the upgrade over Luocha. Yes, she's better than Fu Xuan, but I don't think you need to pull her if you already have a Fu Xuan. And no, she is second to Aventurine if you already have him. I wouldn't say better. If you're a DOT main, I'd get Black Swan's E1 and S1 first. They are both a 25% damage increase to her respectively, and if you don't have an S5 Goodnight Sleepwell, then get S1 on Kafka, and then E2 on her. There's also E1 S1 Ruan mate to aim for, or even Acheron's Lycone if you're a Kafka Black fan. So there is literally plenty of other vertical investment options to go for within your DOT team before picking up HuoHuo, but I will say that she is a definitive best-in-slot sustain pick for DOT, and her buffing is great for the comp and her E1 is also crazy for the team. Not a priority pull over any means, but definitely amazing. Though I consider her a priority pull if you're still using weaker 4-star sustains with your DOT team, in which case aim for HuoHuo, yeah. She's still good in the modern day, unless we get another healer or even a shielder who solves their skill point problems within their base kit and they offer even more benefits to DOT. I think that HuoHuo is gonna be your best bet for a very long time. To me, the ideal healers to have right now in the current meta climate are a built Gallagher, Aventurine, and HuoHuo. Those three will most definitely cover all your potential needs. I know I don't cover that much Honkai Star Rail, and this was probably a jump scare video to all my Genshin or Wuthering Waves enjoying regulars, but HuoHuo is unironically one of my favorite characters in the entire game, so I felt inclined to cook something up for her and talk about her modern value since I use her in literally every new game mode that gets released, and I also happen to be a DOT main, so that gives me the useless qualification of being a true HuoHuo fan. Also, she's the most relatable character in Honkai Star Rail. For reference, I was scared of Baldi's basics. We're both complete and utter wimps, and I simply vibe with that. We both may just be a little bit jumpy. F in the comments for us. Remember to join my Discord and follow my Twitter. Both of those links will be down below in the pinned comment and description. My Ko-Fi will also be in both of those places if you're interested in supporting me. Otherwise, feel free to check out my channel memberships, which I've opened up recently as of posting. You can gain access to some cool emotes. More perks and tiers coming soon. I also don't mention this much, but I stream on Twitch. Check me out at twitch.tv/JuiceChanYT if you want to catch me live sometimes playing Genshin, Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, and much more other things. Hopefully this video was able to tell you HuoHuo's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and I mean it, man. I got scared of my own reflection when I looked out my window once.